Well, thanks for joining us today here at Education Spotlight. Today we're going to be talking about magnet schools across the nation, and we're joined by two experts today. Dr. Myers and Dr. Phillips are going to be telling us about magnet schools and their successes. First, let's start with you, Miss Dr. Myers. What would you say is the pluribus and the unum of magnet schools?
Well, we can really see that magnet schools kind of follow in the wake of two very important Supreme Court decisions in our nation's history. One being Pierce versus Society of Sisters, which deals with kind of the government giving more leeway to parents to choose schools that fit their child's interests, specifically religious institutions, but we've seen that kind of come to gradually mean more leeway in terms of choice. But also the other court case would be Brown versus Board of Education. Magnet schools were initially created to kind of deal with the issue of segregation and reintegrating schools. But concerning the ideas of the pluribus and the unum, we really see magnet schools taking on this idea of the pluribus and taking it to new extremes. The idea of the magnet school is that students and parents alike can look for ways to incorporate their interests and talents into their daily education. Some of those interests might include visual and performing arts, STEM, including science, technology, engineering, and math, international baccalaureate programs, career and technical programs, world languages. Really the only requirement for these magnet schools is that students are interested in the theme that the school provides. The problem really comes for the unum. It doesn't really seem like these magnet schools are pushing students to learn one thing in particular. There's a lot of different diversity going on, both in the student body but also in the student interests that are represented by the themes in the schools.
My gosh, Dr. Myers, that is just fascinating. Let's now move on to Dr. Phillips. And in light of that, what would you say are the normative practices in magnet schools today?
Well, thank you, Dr. Reed. So first of all, they make an attempt, a really concrete attempt, to be a means of integration. We know that obviously technical segregation is illegal, but that hasn't meant that schools aren't practically segregated. But the magnet school movement was a way of bringing different races and ethnicities together. And we see this as being a reflection of God's principles, because He calls us from diverse groups of people on the earth. It's also a way of helping students develop their unique talents and abilities. So God gives each of us our own unique giftings and our own unique ways of being creative. And a magnet school really can help a student develop those gifts and those talents.
All right. Well, what about the anti-normative practices?
Well, first of all, we need to remember that magnet schools still fall under the No Child Left Behind and the Race to the Top and all the legislation that's been passed recently that's making education a whole lot more standardized and adding a lot of frustrations to teachers' lives. And so while there's wonderful amounts of creativity and a little bit more liberty in the curriculum, there's still these guidelines that can often stifle how much the teachers can do. It's also worth noting that even though the aim of a magnet school is to be more diverse, sometimes there isn't quite as much economic diversity as one would hope. And we also need to remember that when you put a group of individuals together that all have the same interests, that can sometimes lead them to think or believe that whatever they're interested in, whatever their talents are, is the most important, and they can stop valuing other people. And so they still need the exposure to other people with different talents, and they should learn to serve others with those talents.
This has been so enlightening. Thanks for joining us today.
Created using Powtoon.